Mass murder by explosion. Peter Griffin blew up an entire bridge with hundreds of people on it, which is genuinely the kind of a thing that should land you in a supermax prison for the rest of your natural life. We're not talking about a little footbridge in someone's backyard. This was a full-scale infrastructure bridge that real people were using to get to work or pick up their kids or whatever normal humans do. The body count on this one is astronomical. Hundreds of people gone because Peter Griffin made a decision. Most people's biggest mistakes are sending an awkward text or overcooking dinner. This man's mistakes require body bags and federal investigations. What makes it worse is that Peter didn't just accidentally press the wrong button. He actively got involved with actual terrorists and helped them plan the whole operation. At what point during the planning meetings did he not realize he was committing acts of terrorism? Was it when they were discussing explosives, when they were scouting the bridge, when they were literally setting up the bombs? It's like joining a book club and not noticing until the third meeting that everyone's been discussing how to rob a bank. Except instead of robbing a bank, it's mass murder. And instead of just attending meetings, Peter was an active participant in the planning stages. Each murder charge is life in prison, so with hundreds of victims, we're talking multiple consecutive life sentences, plus federal terrorism charges that carry the death penalty. Killing a busload of teenagers, managed to wipe out an entire bus full of teenagers in what started as a plan to help a friend. A whole bus full of kids, because Peter Griffin thought he was being helpful. Most people's attempts to help their friends involve lending them money or helping them move furniture. Peter's version of helping involves vehicular manslaughter on a massive scale. The parents of those kids are planning funerals while Peter's probably at home eating a sandwich completely unbothered. The fact that this happened while he was trying to do something good makes it almost worse. If Peter's helpful plans result in mass death, what happens when he's actually trying to cause problems? The man is a walking disaster area with legs. Vehicular manslaughter for each victim is around 10 to 15 years per death. With a whole bus of teenagers, you're looking at somewhere between 200 to 400 years in prison. Murder of an entire band. Straight up grabbed a shotgun and executed 3 musicians who were just doing their job. They were making music, earning a living, probably thinking about what they were going to have for dinner later, and Peter decided it was their time to stop existing. This happened early on too, so the show really established right from the start that Peter Griffin is not just a lovable idiot, he's a legitimate murderer. Most sitcom dads are worried about their kids dating or fixing the roof. Peter's out here committing homicides like it's a normal Tuesday activity. The casualness of it is what gets you. He didn't have some elaborate reason or backstory, he just decided these guys needed to die and made it happen with a firearm. That's premeditated murder. That's life in prison without parole. That's not a quirky character flaw. 3 counts of first-degree murder with a firearm means 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Hey, by the way, I'm posting pretty consistently here, so it would mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel and drop a like for the algorithm. Attempted mass murder of 20 Amish men. Started a massive brawl trying to kill 20 Amish guys who were probably just trying to live their simple, peaceful lives. 20 people. The Amish. The most peaceful, non-threatening group of humans on the planet. The sheer audacity of picking a fight with the Amish is impressive in the worst possible way. These are people who reject violence, don't use electricity, and spend their days building barns and making furniture. And Peter saw them as targets. What did they do to deserve this? Exist too peacefully? He didn't just throw a punch or two, he tried to take out the entire group. Like he was some kind of action hero fighting off enemies, except the enemies were just religious farmers who wanted nothing to do with him. Peter saw 20 Amish men and thought, yeah, I can take them, which is both stupid and homicidal. 20 counts of attempted murder gets you about 10 to 20 years per count. Child abuse against his own daughter, knocked Meg unconscious with a baseball bat and then shot at her because she startled him. His daughter, his own flesh and blood child. With a bat first, then escalated to firearms. If your reaction to being surprised is to grab weapons and attack your own kid, you need more help than any amount of therapy can provide. Most people jump or yell when startled. Peter's fight-or-flight response is apparently attempt murder on family members. The fact that it was Meg makes it somehow worse because she already has it rough enough without her own father literally trying to kill her. This girl deals with constant rejection and humiliation, and then her dad adds physical assault with a deadly weapon to the list. At this point, Meg should just legally emancipate herself and move 3 states away. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon on a minor carries 5 to 20 years. Add in child endangerment and attempted murder charges, and Peter's looking at 25 to 40 years in prison, beating up a minor. Found out a 13-year-old kid was bullying Chris and decided the appropriate response was to beat this child bloody. Not talk to the kid's parents. Not go through the school. Just straight up assault and battery on a minor until the kid was bleeding and traumatized. Sure, the kid was being a jerk, but the solution to mean teenagers is not to physically assault them as as a grown adult man. That's not teaching anyone a lesson, that's committing a felony. Peter's out here thinking he's protecting his son when really he's just traumatizing a different child and racking up charges. The maturity gap here is insane. One person in this fight was 13, the other was a fully grown adult with several decades of life experience, and somehow Peter thought this was a fair and reasonable conflict to engage in. Assault and battery on a minor is 3 to 10 years, but causing serious bodily harm bumps it up to 10 to 20 years. Cannibalism of his best friend cut off Joe's legs and ate them while they were stranded at sea. Not a stranger. Not some random person he'd never met. His actual best friend, Joe Swanson, the guy he hangs out with at the bar, the guy who's been nothing but loyal. Peter decided to turn him into dinner. The level of betrayal here is off the charts. Joe trusted this man, considered him family, and Peter's response to being hungry was to start carving him up like a Thanksgiving turkey. Most people would rather starve than commit cannibalism. Peter saw his disabled friend as a meal opportunity, and somehow their friendship survived this. Joe still hangs out with Peter after Peter literally ate parts of his body. That's not friendship, that's Stockholm Syndrome. Joe should have pressed charges, moved away, and gotten a restraining order, but instead, he's still drinking beer with his cannibal buddy. Cannibalism itself isn't specifically illegal everywhere, but the act of cutting off someone's legs without consent is aggravated assault, mayhem, and potentially attempted murder. That's 15 to 30 years easy. Stealing Joe's vintage car. This wasn't borrowing without asking, this was straight up grand theft auto. They took a valuable vehicle that didn't belong to them and used it for their own purposes. Joe's relationship with Peter is basically just a series of crimes being committed against him while he smiles and pretends everything's fine. Grand theft auto for a vintage vehicle that's probably worth over 50 grand gets you 3 to 10 years in prison depending on the state. It's a felony regardless, and if they damaged it while joyriding, that adds property destruction charges on top of the theft. Selling his daughter. Literally sold Meg to another person to pay off a debt. Human trafficking. His own daughter. To settle what was probably a stupid bet or something equally ridiculous. Your children are not bartering chips, they're not currency, they're human beings with rights and feelings. Peter saw Meg as a solution to a financial problem and shipped her off like she was a used car he was trying to unload. The fact that he chose Meg specifically tells you everything about how Peter views her. He wouldn't sell Chris. He definitely wouldn't sell Stewie. But Meg, she's expendable in Peter's mind, which makes this crime even more disturbing. Because it's not just trafficking, it's paternal rejection in its most extreme form. Human trafficking, especially of a minor, is federal prison time of 10 years to life. Since she's his own daughter, it's also child endangerment, custodial interference, and possibly kidnapping charges. Peter's looking at a minimum of 25 years, but more likely, life in federal prison without parole. Becoming a meth cook and dealer. Decided to become a drug lord because apparently Walter White made it look fun. This man watched Breaking Bad and thought, yeah, that seems like a solid career path with no downsides whatsoever. He didn't just cook a little bit for personal use, he flooded the entire town of Quahog with methamphetamine. Peter became a legitimate drug kingpin, destroying lives and fueling addiction across his community because he stumbled into an opportunity and lacked the moral compass to walk away. Most people would call the police if they found a meth lab. Maybe an extremely adventurous person would take pictures for social media. Peter saw industrial drug manufacturing equipment and thought, this is mine now. Time to become a criminal entrepreneur. Manufacturing and distributing methamphetamine is 10 to 40 years in federal prison for a first offense. But Peter wasn't small time. He was flooding an entire town. That's distribution on a massive scale, which means enhanced penalties. Smoking crack cocaine like he's trying out a new snack flavor. Lois walks in on him with a crack pipe and he's just casually smoking it like it's a cigarette. The progression from beer to crack is not a normal trajectory. That's not trying something new. That's a complete abandonment of self-preservation and common sense. Peter went from guy who drinks too much beer to guy smoking crack cocaine in his living room without any apparent hesitation. The casual nature of it is somehow more disturbing than if he'd been hiding it. He's not ashamed. He's not trying to keep it secret. He's just openly doing crack in front of his family like this is a completely normal activity for a suburban dad. Possession of crack cocaine is 1 to 5 years for a first offense, but if this isn't his first drug charge, and given that he was just cooking meth, it could be enhanced to 10 years. Kidnapping a sick child because they disagreed with the parents' medical decisions. Now sure, they had good intentions, they wanted to get the kid proper medical care. I had good reasons doesn't make abducting someone's child legal. You can't just grab kids whose parents you disagree with and run off to the hospital. That's not being helpful, that's committing a felony. There are proper channels for reporting child neglect or medical abuse. Those channels do not include include kidnapping. The road to prison is paved with good intentions, and Peter drove down that road at full speed while carrying a stolen child. This is the kind of thing that gets you on a registry and banned from ever being near children again. Kidnapping a minor is 20 years to life in prison. Even if Peter had good intentions, kidnapping is kidnapping. Armed bank robbery with his daughter. Took Meg on a father-daughter bonding experience that involved attempting to rob a bank with guns. Most dads take their daughters to get ice cream or see a movie. Peter decided quality time meant committing armed robbery together. Teaching your teenage daughter how to rob banks is not parenting. It's contributing to the delinquency of a minor while also committing multiple felonies. This is the opposite of preparing your child for adult life. This is preparing your child for adult prison. The fact that Peter thought this was an appropriate activity to share with his daughter shows how broken his understanding of family bonding is. Other dads are coaching Little League. Peter's coaching grand larceny. Armed bank robbery is 10 to 25 years in federal prison because banks are federally insured. Killing his friend's cat. Killed Quagmire's cat while trying to prank it by shaving it, and then kept going because he thought cats actually have 9 lives, like the expression says. The logic here is toddler level, except most toddlers don't have access to sharp objects and wouldn't think killing a pet is funny. This is animal cruelty with a side of, I don't understand how reality works. Peter genuinely believed that because there's a saying about cats having 9 lives, he could keep killing this one cat and it would be fine. That's not how life works. That's not how anything works. Quagmire loved that cat. It was his pet, his companion, and Peter killed it over what he thought was a joke, and then kept mutilating the corpse because he expected it to resurrect. At what point during the repeated killing did Peter not think, maybe I should stop? Animal cruelty causing death is 1 to 5 years in prison in most states, with some states going up to 7 years for particularly heinous cases. Destroying Cleveland's house with a tank. Got access to a military tank, and his first thought was to blow up his neighbor Cleveland's house. Not to admire the tank. Not to take it for a responsible drive. His immediate instinct was destruction of property. Cleveland's house has been destroyed so many times by Peter that insurance companies probably have a specific Peter Griffin exclusion in their policies. At some point, Cleveland should have moved to a different state, which he eventually did, and honestly, who can blame him? The fact that Peter had access to military equipment is its own problem, but what he chose to do with that access tells you everything about his decision-making process. Most people would use a tank to feel powerful or take cool pictures. Peter uses it to commit property destruction against someone who's supposed to be his friend. Destruction of property with an explosive device or military weapon is 5 to 20 years. Theft of military equipment is another 10 years. Blackmailing his father-in-law. Discovered Carter was having an affair and immediately jumped to blackmail. Not, let's talk about this, or even, I'm going to tell your wife. Straight to, obey me or else. He turned family drama into extortion like it was the most natural next step. Most people would either mind their own business or handle it with some level of grace. Peter saw an opportunity to gain power over his rich father-in-law and grabbed it with both hands. This is textbook blackmail. Threatening to reveal damaging information unless demands are met. It's illegal. It's immoral. And it's exactly the kind of thing Peter does when given any leverage over another person. Extortion and blackmail carry 2 to 15 years depending on what Peter demanded and how much he got. Stealing his neighbor's pool. Declared his property an independent nation, his first act as president was to steal Cleveland's pool. Most people starting a new country focus on writing a constitution or establishing basic services. Peter went straight to pool theft. His entire presidency was just an excuse to commit property crimes while pretending he had diplomatic immunity. He didn't want independence for any noble reason. He wanted to steal stuff without consequences. The pool is massive and expensive. Peter literally stole a structure worth thousands of dollars because he declared himself above the law. That's not clever. That's just theft with extra steps and delusions of sovereignty. Grand larceny for stealing property worth over $10,000 is 3 to 10 years in prison. An in-ground pool can cost $30,000 to $100,000, so this is definitely grand larceny. Add in trespassing and property damage from removing it, and Peter's looking at 5 to 15 years. Becoming a pimp. Decided to manage clients for Quagmire's gigolo business, which means he became an actual pimp. This man was out here running a whole operation, taking a cut of the profits, living that pimp life like he's in a 1970s crime drama. Most midlife crises involve buying a sports car or getting really into CrossFit. Peter chose sex work management as his new career path. He wasn't just helping a friend. He was actively profiting from organizing paid sexual encounters. The fact that he treated this like a legitimate business venture makes it even worse. Peter had business cards made. He took it seriously. He fully committed to being a pimp like it was just another job opportunity that fell into his lap. Pandering and pimping charges carry 3 to 10 years in most states. If Peter was managing multiple clients or running an organized operation, it could be charged as racketeering, which is 10 to 20 years. Attempting to rob his father-in-law's vault, thought he was Danny Ocean and recruited his friends for an elaborate elaborate heist to break into Carter's vault during a party. This man has seen too many heist movies and not enough reality. Peter Griffin does not have the skill set, planning ability, or basic competence required for a sophisticated vault robbery. He can barely operate a toaster without causing a fire, but somehow he convinced himself he could pull off a complex theft operation. The planning alone probably involves so many crimes: conspiracy to commit robbery, trespassing, probably some breaking and entering. And all of this while he was a guest at a party, which adds a level of betrayal to the criminality. Attempted robbery of a vault is 5 to 15 years. Conspiracy to commit robbery is another 3 to 10 years. Limousine jousting. Participated in a limousine joust like he was a medieval knight, except instead of the horses they used expensive cars. Two grown men charging at each other with lances because they couldn't settle their differences like adults. The property damage must have been insane. Limousines aren't cheap. Lances aren't street legal. And jousting itself is illegal in most places for extremely obvious reasons involving people die when you stab them while vehicles collide. This wasn't even for a good reason. Peter just decided that modern conflict resolution was boring, and medieval combat sports were the way to go. Most people have arguments and then move on. Peter and his opponent decided attempted vehicular manslaughter via anachronistic combat was more appropriate. Peter's looking at 10 to 35 years for medieval combat in the streets. Faking terminal illness for a TV show. Exploited a children's charity by faking that Chris had a terminal illness so they could get a canceled TV show brought back. He made his son lie about dying. He manipulated a wish-granting organization that exists to help actually sick kids, all because he was upset about his entertainment options. This is fraud, child abuse, and possibly the most selfish crime on this entire list. Somewhere a kid with actual cancer got bumped down the wish list because Peter wanted to watch his stupid show. The priorities here are completely backwards. The charity exists to bring joy to dying children, and Peter saw it as a customer service line for his TV complaints. He wasted their time, resources, and goodwill because he couldn't accept that his show got canceled like a normal person. Peter's looking at 8 to 35 years for scamming dying children, using his baby for insurance fraud, threw his injured, unconscious baby in front of a moving car to stage an accident instead of taking him to the hospital like a normal parent. Stewie was genuinely hurt and needed medical attention, and Peter's solution was more violence and probably insurance fraud. This is child endangerment on top of whatever the original injury was. Peter looked at his hurt baby and thought, you know what would help? Vehicular impact. The fact that he chose this over just driving to the emergency room shows how broken his problem-solving skills are. Hospital too far away or too expensive. So obviously the solution is to commit fraud using your baby's body as evidence. Perfect logic, no notes. Child endangerment causing serious bodily harm is 5 to 20 years. Insurance fraud is 3 to 10 years. Assault on a minor is another 5 to 15 years. If Stewie had died, this would be negligent homicide for another 10 to 30 years. Drunk driving and causing a major crash. Fell asleep at the wheel after drinking and caused a crash so bad that death himself showed up. This is drunk driving combined with every other bad decision possible. He was drinking, he got behind the wheel, he fell asleep while driving. Every link in that chain is its own crime. This wasn't even rock bottom for him because Peter's relationship with alcohol is so dysfunctional that causing a major accident barely registered as a wake-up call. He probably had another beer later that same day. The fact that death appeared means people probably died in this crash. Peter's drunk driving literally ended lives, and he still didn't stop drinking and driving. At this point, it's not just criminal, it's pathological. DUI causing death is vehicular manslaughter at 10 to 20 years per victim. Multiple victims means multiple charges running consecutively. Add in reckless driving, DUI, and leaving the scene if he drove away. And Peter's looking at 30 to 100 years depending on how many people died in that crash. Showing up drunk to court-mandated AA. After getting in trouble for drunk driving, Peter was ordered by a court to attend AA meetings. His response was to show up drunk and bring alcohol with him to the meetings. The man was court-ordered to attend these meetings specifically because he has a drinking problem, and he brought drinks. That's not just disorderly conduct, that's going out of your way to be as defiant and disrespectful as humanly possible to the justice system. Most people who get court-mandated treatment at least pretend to comply. Peter saw it as an opportunity to drink in a new location with a captive audience. The level of denial and defiance here is honestly impressive in the worst way. Violating court orders is contempt of court at 30 days to 2 years. Public intoxication is another 30 days to a year. Public indecency and streaking. Gotten naked in public and streaked across televised events so many times it's basically a hobby at this point. Every time there's a camera, Peter sees an opportunity to commit indecent exposure on a mass scale. Most people have shame. Most people understand that public nudity is illegal and inappropriate. Peter sees a broadcast and thinks, time to ruin this for everyone watching at home with my naked body. The fact that he does this repeatedly means it's not an accident or a one-time lapse in judgment. This is a pattern of behavior. Peter has been arrested for this multiple times and still does it, which means the legal consequences aren't severe enough or he genuinely doesn't care about being a registered registered sex offender. Indecent exposure is 6 months to 2 years per incident. Peter's probably looking at 10 to 30 years total across all his streaking incidents, plus mandatory sex offender registration. Solicitation of prostitutes. Attempted to hire prostitutes, adding solicitation to his already extensive criminal record. At this point, it would be easier to list the crimes he hasn't committed than the ones he has. This man has worked his way through the entire criminal code like it's a checklist. Murder, check theft, check fraud, check drug dealing, and now prostitution solicitation. Check. Peter Griffin isn't just a bad citizen, he's actively trying to break every law simultaneously. His criminal record is so long that reading it out loud would take longer than most prison sentences. Solicitation of prostitution is 6 months to 2 years for a first offense. Multiple offenses bump it to 1 to 5 years. If Peter's soliciting in areas with enhanced penalties like school zones, it could be 3 to 10 years. Combined with everything else, this is just another few years on top of the multiple life sentences Peter's already accumulated. Peter Griffin isn't a sitcom dad, he's America's most prolific criminal, and Quahog is just lucky it's animated. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so please subscribe, and thanks for watching.